The coffee was still hot when my marriage ended. I was standing in our kitchen watching the steam rise from my mug when Celeste's text arrived. No warning, no build-up, just 23 words that demolished 15 years of shared life. Change of plans. You're staying home from Europe. My kids want their real dad. I read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. My kids want their real dad. Not our kids, not the kids, my kids. I set the coffee down and stared at the phone. Celeste was supposed to be at her mother's house with Eli and Lila, planning our family trip to London. We'd booked the flights 3 months ago. The hotel overlooked Hyde Park. I'd even learned basic French phrases, thinking we might take a day trip to Paris. Apparently, I'd been planning a vacation for someone else's family. My hands stayed steady as I opened my laptop. 15 years in project management teaches you to compartmentalize crisis. Step 1, assess the damage. Step 2, minimize exposure. Step 3, execute the plan. I started with our joint checking account. Balance, $43,000. I transferred my half to my personal account, then closed the joint account entirely. Next came the credit cards, all canceled. The utilities, insurance, mortgage, every automatic payment tied to my name got terminated. The Europe trip, canceled, all of it. Flights, hotel, rental car, even the theater tickets Celeste had insisted we needed for that West End show. By noon, I dismantled our financial life with the same methodical precision I used to manage construction projects. Every shared obligation, every joint responsibility, gone. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes, grabbed my tools from the garage, and loaded my truck. 15 years of marriage reduced to whatever fit in a Ford F-150. Mrs. Patterson from next door was watering her roses when I carried out the last box. "Going somewhere, Jack?" she called out, her voice carrying that particular nosiness that made her the neighborhood's unofficial intelligence network. "Change of plans, Mrs. Patterson," I said, loading the box into the truck bed. "Seems I'm not who I thought I was." She frowned, clearly wanting more details, but I was already climbing into the driver's seat. I left a single note on the kitchen counter. "Congratulations on your new family. The house is yours. Don't call me." Then I drove away from the life I thought I'd built. The Riverside Motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it had 2 things I needed: cash payments and no questions asked. The room smelled like disinfectant and decades of other people's problems. But it would do. I sat on the bed and called Ray Morrison, my old army buddy who'd gone into private investigation after his discharge. Ray answered on the second ring. "Jack Vance, haven't heard from you in months. What's the occasion?" "I need a favor, Ray. The kind that requires your professional services." "Ah, crap, what did Celeste do?" Ray had never liked my wife, called her Ice Queen behind her back, though he was polite enough to her face. Apparently his instincts were better than mine. "She decided our kids need their real father. I'm curious who that might be." Silence on the line, then, "You want me to dig? I want you to excavate. Full archaeological survey. I want to know who, when, where, and how long. This is going to cost you. Ray, I just liquidated 15 years of joint assets. Money isn't the issue." "All right, give me 48 hours. I hung up and stared at the motel room's water-stained ceiling. Somewhere across town, Celeste was probably discovering that our credit cards weren't working, that our bank accounts were empty, that the man she'd dismissed with a text message had taken her seriously. My phone buzzed. Celeste calling. I declined the call. She called again. Declined. Then came the texts. "Jack, what did you do to our accounts? This isn't funny. Call me back right now." I turned off the phone and went to find a bar. Murphy's Tavern was the kind of place where construction workers drank after long days and nobody asked about your problems unless you volunteered them. I ordered a whiskey and settled into a corner booth to think. Celeste had always been ambitious, smart, beautiful, and absolutely ruthless when she wanted something. She'd climbed from assistant teacher to head of admissions at Riverside Academy, the most exclusive private school in our area. She networked like a professional politician and collected influential friends the way some people collected stamps. But she'd also been careful, discreet. If she was having an affair, she wouldn't have been sloppy about it, which meant this had been planned. The text wasn't a moment of anger or a heat of passion decision. It was calculated. cold. She'd wanted me gone, and she'd found the most efficient way to make it happen. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dad, Mom says you left. What's going on?" Eli, my 16-year-old son. I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "Ask your mother about her change of plans. I'm sure she'll explain everything." I finished my whiskey and ordered another. Ray called the next morning with preliminary results. "Your wife's been busy, Jack, very busy." I was sitting in my truck outside Riverside Academy, watching parents drop off their kids in BMWs and Mercedes. Celeste's silver Lexus was in her usual parking spot. "How busy?" "David Kessler, real estate developer, divorced, 42, drives a Tesla Model S, lives in that new high-rise downtown. Ring any bells?" The name was familiar. "Kessler Development. They built the shopping center out on Route 9. That's him. Also built the new condos by the lake. Guy's worth about $8 million according to public records." "How long?" "Still working on that, but I've got photos of them together dating back 6 months. Lunch meetings, coffee dates, one very interesting evening at the Marriott downtown." My grip tightened on the phone. "Send me everything." "Jack, you sure you want to see this stuff?" "Ray, I liquidated my marriage yesterday based on a text message. Yeah, I want to see it." 20 minutes later, my phone chimed with an encrypted email. Ray had been thorough. Photos of Celeste and David at restaurants I couldn't afford. Photos of them entering and leaving the Marriott. Photos of David's Tesla parked outside our house on a Tuesday afternoon when I'd been at work. The last photo was time-stamped 3 days ago. Celeste and David at a jewelry store downtown, looking at engagement rings. I sat in my truck staring at the photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a replacement. David Kessler wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was auditioning to be my substitute. Well, if Celeste wanted to trade up, she was welcome to try. But she was going to learn that some trades come with hidden costs. I drove to the gym where David worked out. Riverside Fitness was the kind of upscale place where membership cost more than most people's car payments. David's Tesla was in the parking lot, plugged into one of the charging stations. I walked around the car, admiring its sleek lines and pristine paint job. Such a beautiful machine. It would be a shame if something happened to it. From my toolbox, I retrieved a small device, a GPS tracker that Ray had given me years ago for a different project. I attached it to the underside of David's car, then walked into the gym. The membership fee was outrageous, but I paid cash for a day pass. David was easy to spot, tall, tanned, and working out with the focused intensity of a man who considered his body a business asset. He was doing bench presses, grunting with each rep, sweat gleaming on his artificially bronzed chest. I waited until he finished his set, then approached. "David Kessler?" He looked up, wiping his face with a towel. "Yeah?" "Jack Vance. I think you know my wife." His face went through several interesting expressions: surprise, recognition, then a kind of smug satisfaction that made me want to hit him. "Jack, Celeste mentioned you might be stopping by. Did she? How thoughtful of her to prepare you." David stood up, and I noticed he was trying to make himself look bigger, puffing out his chest like a rooster. "Look, man, I know this is awkward, but..." "Awkward?" I laughed. "David, you've been sleeping with my wife for 6 months, helped her plan my removal from our family, and you think this is awkward? This isn't awkward. This is just the beginning. Hey now, I don't want any trouble." "Too late for that, don't you think?" I stepped closer and David took a step back. For all his gym muscles, he had the soft look of a man who'd never been in a real fight. "Here's what's going to happen, David. You're going to discover that stealing another man's family comes with consequences, and I'm going to enjoy watching you learn that lesson." I turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and David, you might want to check your car. I think someone spilled something on it." I left him standing there, confusion and worry warring on his face. Outside, I admired my handiwork. David's pristine Tesla now sported a generous coating of chocolate protein shake across the windshield, poured through the slightly open sunroof. The charging cable had been disconnected and tied in a neat bow around the driver's side mirror. It was petty, but it was a start. The next phase required more sophisticated planning. I spent the evening in my motel room studying the intelligence Ray had gathered. David's schedule was remarkably predictable. Gym at 6 a.m., office by 8, lunch at the same upscale bistro, 3 times a week, home by 7 unless he was with Celeste. Celeste's patterns were equally routine. School until 4, then either home or meeting David at various locations around town. She'd been careful to avoid being seen together at obvious places, but Ray's surveillance had caught them at a dozen different spots. What interested me most was their communication pattern. They used a messaging app called Signal, thinking it was secure. What they didn't know was that Celeste had synced her messages to our shared iPad, which she'd forgotten was in my truck. I spent 2 hours reading their conversations, and each message made my resolve stronger. David, can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. Celeste, soon. I'm working on the Jack problem. David, the kids will love the new house. Much better than that suburban box. Celeste, Eli's already excited about the private school connections you have. This will be so much better for them. The Jack problem. That's what I'd become in my own marriage. My phone rang. Celeste again. This time I answered. Jack, thank God. Where are you? The kids are asking questions I can't answer. I'm sure you'll think of something. You're very creative. Don't be like this. We need to talk. I got your message, Celeste. Loud and clear. Your kids want their real dad. I'm just making room for him. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you meant exactly what you said. Silence on the line. Then, where are you staying? That's not your concern anymore. Jack, please, come home. We can work this out. Home? You mean the house where David's been visiting while I was at work? That home? Another silence, longer this time. You've been watching me. I've been paying attention, something I should have done months ago. Jack, Save it, Celeste. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I hung up and turned off the phone. Ray called on the burner phone he'd given me. I've got more intel. You're not going to like it. Hit me. They've been planning this for months. I found emails between Celeste and a divorce attorney. She was going to file papers next week, claim irreconcilable differences, and ask for primary custody. On what grounds? Emotional distance. Failure to provide adequate financial support for the children's educational needs. Basically, she was going to paint you as a deadbeat dad who couldn't keep up with her lifestyle. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And David? He was going to swoop in as the stable father figure. Already had plans to enroll the kids in private schools, set up college funds, the whole 9 yards. This wasn't just an affair, Jack. This was a hostile takeover. I stared out the motel window at the parking lot, processing this information. There's more, Ray continued. Celeste cleaned out your savings account 2 days before she sent that text. Transferred it to an account in her name only. She was planning to claim you abandoned the family and left them financially destitute. How much? $37,000. Your entire emergency fund. The money I'd saved for years, putting away a little each month for unexpected expenses or opportunities, gone. Ray, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I want you to find out everything about David Kessler's business. Every deal, every partner, every potential weakness. And I want to know about Celeste's job, her reputation at the school, her relationships with other parents, anything that might be useful. You planning something specific? I'm planning to show them what happens when you try to erase someone who's still very much alive. The next morning, I put my plan into motion. First stop, Riverside Academy. I arrived during morning drop-off when the parking lot was full of parents and kids. David's Tesla was there, parked next to Celeste's Lexus. Apparently, he was already playing stepfather. I parked across the street and watched through binoculars as David walked Eli and Lila to the school entrance. My kids, my son and daughter, being escorted by their mother's boyfriend like he belonged there. Eli looked uncomfortable, glancing around as if he was embarrassed. Lila seemed confused, holding back while David tried to take her hand. She pulled away and walked beside Celeste instead. At least my daughter had good instincts. I waited until David returned to his car, then followed him to his office. Kessler Development occupied the top 2 floors of a downtown high-rise. David's reserved parking spot was in the building's underground garage. Perfect. I spent the day researching David's business dealings. Public records showed Kessler Development was involved in 3 major projects around town, including a controversial shopping complex that had displaced several low-income families. The local newspaper had run several critical articles about David's aggressive development tactics. More interesting were the building permits and zoning variances David had obtained. Several seemed questionable, approved despite community opposition. I made notes of the city council members who'd voted in his favor and the dates of the approvals. By afternoon, I had the outline of a plan. Phase 1 began with a phone call to Jennifer Walsh, the investigative reporter who'd written the critical articles about Kessler development. Ms. Walsh, this is Jack Morrison. I have some information about David Kessler's development projects that might interest you. What kind of information? The kind that involves zoning variances approved under questionable circumstances and city council members who might have been influenced by more than just community benefit. Can you be more specific? Not over the phone, but I can provide documentation, public records that show a pattern of approvals that don't match the normal process. We arranged to meet the next day. Phase 2 involved a visit to Riverside Academy after hours. I still had my key card from volunteering at school events, and security was typically light in the early evening. Celeste's office was on the second floor, overlooking the courtyard where parents gathered during pickup time. Her computer was password protected, but she'd always been predictable with passwords. I tried her birthday, then Eli's, then Lila's. The third attempt worked. Celeste's email contained exactly what I'd hoped to find: correspondence with other parents, scheduling meetings, and most importantly, gossip about school families. Celeste had always been the unofficial social coordinator for the school's parent community, which meant she knew everyone's secrets. I copied the files to a flash drive and left everything exactly as I'd found it. Phase 3 was the most satisfying. David's Tesla was still in the underground garage when I returned that evening. The security cameras had blind spots. I'd identified them during my earlier reconnaissance, and I used them to approach the car unseen. I didn't damage anything. That would have been too obvious, too crude. Instead, I left a gift, a manila envelope tucked under his windshield wiper, containing printouts of every signal message between him and Celeste. The note attached was simple. Thought you should know that your private conversations aren't as private as you think. A concerned citizen. I was back in my truck, parked on the street, when David discovered the envelope. Even from a distance, I could see his face go pale as he read the contents. He looked around the garage frantically, then pulled out his phone and made a call. Probably to Celeste. My burner phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Package delivered to Jennifer Walsh. She's very interested in your information. Meeting set for tomorrow morning. I smiled and started the truck. The pieces were falling into place. The meeting with Jennifer Walsh went better than I'd hoped. These documents are explosive, she said, spreading the papers across her desk. If this pattern holds up, it suggests systematic corruption in the zoning approval process. I thought you might find them interesting. Where did you get these? Public records. Anyone could have compiled them if they'd taken the time to look. Jennifer was sharp, in her 30s, with the kind of focused intensity that made her good at her job. She'd been investigating municipal corruption for years, and David Kessler had been on her radar for some time. This council member here, she pointed to a name on one of the documents, Robert Chen. He's voted in favor of every single Kessler development project, even the ones that violated community guidelines. Interesting coincidence. Very interesting, especially since Chen's construction company has been subcontracted on 3 of those projects. I'd noticed that connection but hadn't mentioned it. Better to let her discover it herself. I'll need to verify all of this, Jennifer said. But if it checks out, this could be front-page material. I'm sure David Kessler will be thrilled to see his name in print again. She looked at me sharply. You have something personal against Kessler? Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing justice done. That afternoon, I put phase 2 of my plan into action. Celeste's social circle was tight-knit and gossipy. The parents at Riverside Academy lived for drama, as long as it was happening to someone else. Celeste had always been careful to position herself at the center of their social network, collecting secrets and dispensing judgment with equal measure. Time to turn that network against her. I started with Sarah Mitchell, whose husband's gambling problem Celeste had discovered and shared with select friends. An anonymous email to Sarah containing screenshots of Celeste's messages about the gambling, along with comments about Sarah's pathetic denial and obvious desperation. Then Lisa Park, whose daughter's learning disability Celeste had mocked in private messages. Another anonymous email, this one including Celeste's suggestion that Lisa was making excuses for her child's laziness. I sent similar messages to 6 other parents, each one containing evidence of Celeste's private opinions about their families. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be traced back to me, but devastating to someone whose social position depended on being trusted with secrets. By evening, my burner phone was buzzing with reports from Ray, who was monitoring social media and local gossip networks. "It's working," he said. "The parent group chat is blowing up. Someone leaked that Celeste has been talking behind everyone's back, and now they're all turning on each other trying to figure out who's been sharing secrets." And Celeste? Radio silence. "She's not responding to messages, not posting on social media. I think she's figured out she's in trouble." "Good. Phase 3 starts tomorrow." Phase 3 was the most ambitious part of my plan, and it required perfect timing. David Kessler had a weekly routine. Every Thursday evening, he attended a city council meeting. As a developer, he needed to stay informed about zoning changes and development opportunities. He usually sat in the back, taking notes and networking with other business owners. This Thursday would be different. I arrived at City Hall early, taking a seat in the middle section where I'd have a clear view of David when he arrived. I was dressed professionally, khakis, button-down shirt, the kind of outfit that made me invisible in a crowd of concerned citizens. David entered at exactly 7:15, his usual time. He looked nervous, checking his phone constantly and glancing around the room as if he expected trouble. He was right to be worried. The meeting began with routine business: budget discussions, permit approvals, community announcements. I waited patiently, knowing that the real show would come during the public comment period. At 8:30, Mayor Richardson opened the floor for public comments. I stood up. "Mayor Richardson, council members, my name is Jack Vance, and I'm here to discuss some concerns about the development approval process in our city." David's head snapped up, his face going pale when he saw me. "Specifically," I continued, "I'd like to address the pattern of zoning variances that have been approved for Kessler development, despite significant community opposition." I walked to the podium, carrying a folder of documents. David was staring at me with undisguised panic. In the past 2 years, Kessler Development has received approval for 6 projects that required zoning variances. In each case, the variance was approved despite opposition from community groups and concerns raised by city planning staff. I opened the folder and began reading specific examples: the shopping complex that displaced families, the luxury condos that violated height restrictions, the office building that eliminated green space. "What's particularly interesting," I said, "is that Councilman Chen voted in favor of every single one of these projects, and his construction company was subsequently awarded subcontracts worth over $2 million. The room was completely silent. David looked like he wanted to disappear. "I'm not suggesting any wrongdoing," I continued. "I'm simply pointing out that the appearance of impropriety is concerning to citizens who expect transparency in their local government." I submitted copies of all the documents to the city clerk and returned to my seat. David left the meeting early. The next morning brought the first major victory. Jennifer Walsh's article ran on the front page of the local newspaper. Questions raised about city development approvals. The story detailed the pattern I'd identified, complete with quotes from community activists and former city employees who confirmed that the approval process for Kessler development projects had been unusually smooth. By noon, the story had been picked up by the regional news network. David Kessler's face was on television, looking uncomfortable as reporters asked him about the allegations. "These are baseless accusations," he said, standing outside his office building. "Kessler Development has always followed proper procedures and worked within the legal framework. But the damage was done. The story raised questions about city corruption, and David's name was now permanently associated with the controversy." My phone rang. "Celeste, Jack, we need to talk." "I thought we already covered everything. David's business is being investigated because of some newspaper article. People are saying you're behind it." "People say a lot of things, Celeste. Most of it's probably true. This has to stop. You're hurting innocent people." "Innocent?" I laughed. "David Kessler is many things, but innocent isn't one of them, and neither are you. What do you want?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to erase me from our family? Fine, but I'm not going quietly. The kids are asking questions. Eli knows something's wrong. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided they needed a new father." I hung up and immediately called Ray. "How's the social media campaign going?" "Better than expected. The parent group at Riverside Academy is in complete meltdown. 3 families have already pulled their kids out of school because they don't trust the administration anymore. And Celeste? She's been suspended pending an investigation. Apparently, several parents complained that she'd been sharing confidential information about their families. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Celeste's carefully constructed social position was crumbling, just as she'd tried to dismantle my life. "There's more," Ray continued. "David's having problems with his current development project. The city council voted to postpone approval, pending a review of all his previous permits. How much will that cost him? Probably several $1 million in delays and legal fees. Plus, his investors are getting nervous. I heard from a source in the banking community that his credit line is being reviewed." The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. That evening, I decided to check on my children. I parked across the street from our house, Celeste's house now, and watched through the windows. Eli was in his room, probably doing homework. Lila was in the living room, watching television. Celeste was pacing back and forth, talking on the phone. She looked stressed, gesturing wildly as she spoke. David's Tesla wasn't in the driveway. Interesting. I called Eli's cell phone. "Dad, where are you? I'm around, how are you doing? Mom's been acting weird. She keeps having these intense phone conversations, and she told us David won't be coming around for a while." "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, relieved. The guy's kind of a creep. He kept trying to act like he was my dad or something. And Lila? She's confused. She doesn't understand why you left or why David was here so much. Mom won't explain anything. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Eli. Dad, are you coming back?" I looked at the house where I'd lived for 8 years, where I'd raised my children, where I'd thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. "I don't know, son. Your mother made some choices that changed everything. She keeps saying you abandoned us. What do you think?" Silence for a moment. Then, "I think she's lying. You wouldn't just leave without a reason." "Smart kid. Takes after his father." "Eli, I want you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, I love you and Lila. That will never change. I know it, Dad. I love you too." After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, watching my family's life continue without me. It hurt more than I'd expected, but it also strengthened my resolve. Celeste had started this war when she decided to replace me. Now, she was going to learn what it felt like to lose everything. The final phase of my plan required careful timing and absolute precision. David Kessler was scheduled to appear before the city council the following Tuesday to address the corruption allegations. It would be a public meeting with local media coverage and concerned citizens in attendance. His reputation and his business were on the line. Celeste, meanwhile, was facing her own crisis. The investigation at Riverside Academy had uncovered evidence that she'd been sharing confidential information about students and families, violating privacy policies and professional ethics standards. Her job was in jeopardy, and her social circle had completely turned against her. But I wasn't finished. Monday evening, I made a final visit to our house. I still had keys, and I knew Celeste's schedule. She would be at a mandatory meeting with the school board until at least 9 o'clock. The house felt strange, like visiting a museum of my former life. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for subtle changes that marked David's presence. Expensive wine in the kitchen, unfamiliar toiletries in the master bathroom, a men's watch on the dresser. I went to my old office and retrieved something I'd hidden months earlier, a digital recorder I'd used for work meetings. I checked the battery and recording quality, then placed it in the living room, hidden behind a picture frame where it would capture conversations clearly. Then I waited. Celeste arrived home at 9:30, talking on her phone as she entered. "I don't care what the lawyers say, David. This is your fault. If you hadn't been so careless with those permits, none of this would have happened." She was talking to David, and she sounded furious. "No, you listen to me. I gave up my marriage for this relationship, and now I'm about to lose my job because of your problems. The parents at school are treating me like I'm toxic." I couldn't hear David's responses, but Celeste's side of the conversation was revealing enough. "What do you mean you need space? We're supposed to be building a life together. You promised me." A long pause. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, then we're done. But don't expect me to keep quiet about the things I know." She hung up and threw the phone across the room. I waited another hour until I was sure she was asleep, then retrieved the recorder and left the house. The next morning, I made copies of the recording and prepared for the city council meeting. The council chambers were packed. David sat in the front row with his lawyer, looking like a man facing execution. Celeste was nowhere to be seen, which wasn't surprising given her current situation. Mayor Richardson called the meeting to order and announced that they would be addressing the allegations against Kessler Development. David's lawyer spoke first, denying any wrongdoing and characterizing the allegations as a smear campaign by business competitors. David himself gave a prepared statement about his commitment to ethical development and community benefit. It was polished, professional, and completely unconvincing. When they opened the floor for public comment, I stood up again. Mayor Richardson, I have additional information that might be relevant to this discussion. David's lawyer started to object, but the mayor allowed me to continue. Last night, I obtained a recording of a phone conversation between David Kessler and an associate. In this conversation, Mr. Kessler discusses his knowledge of improper permit approvals and his relationship with city officials. I played a carefully edited portion of Celeste's phone call, removing her voice but keeping David's responses, which I'd reconstructed from context. To the audience, it sounded like David admitting to corruption and discussing bribes. The room erupted. David jumped up, shouting that the recording was fake, but the damage was done. The council voted unanimously to refer the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. David's business was finished. As the crowd filed out of the chambers, I approached David in the hallway. Enjoyed the meeting, David? His face was red with rage. You son of a witch! You destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what was already there. That recording is fake. You manipulated it. Prove it. David stepped closer, his fists clenched. You think you've won? You've lost everything too. Your wife, your kids, your house. At least I can rebuild. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you're a disgraced developer facing criminal investigation, your business is ruined, and your girlfriend just dumped you. But hey, at least you got to play house with my family for a few months. David swung at me. I'd been expecting it. 15 years of construction work and army training had kept me in decent shape, while David's gym muscles were mostly for show. I ducked his punch and responded with a short, sharp jab to his solar plexus. David doubled over, gasping for breath. Here's some free advice, David. Next time you want to steal someone's life, make sure they're actually dead first. I walked away, leaving him on the floor of the City Hall corridor. The local news coverage was extensive. David Kessler's fall from grace became a cautionary tale about corruption and hubris. The district attorney's investigation expanded to include several city council members, and David's development company filed for bankruptcy within a month. Celeste lost her job at Riverside Academy. The school board determined that she'd violated multiple policies regarding confidentiality and professional conduct. Her reputation in the community was destroyed, and she was forced to move back in with her parents. The house, our house, went into foreclosure when she couldn't make the mortgage payments without my income. I bought it back at auction for 60% of its original value. When I moved back in, I found a note from Celeste on the kitchen counter. I hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed everything we built together. I wrote a response and left it where she would find it. You destroyed it first. I just cleared the wreckage. Eli and Lila came to live with me full-time. Celeste had visitation rights, but she rarely used them. I think seeing the kids reminded her of everything she'd lost. Dad, Eli asked me one evening as we were having dinner in our restored kitchen, why did Mom do all that stuff? I don't know, son. Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense to anyone else. Do you hate her? I thought about that for a long time. No. I hate what she did, but I don't hate her. Hate takes too much energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on you and Lila. Lila, who had been quietly eating her spaghetti, looked up. Are you going to get married again, Daddy? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm happy with just the three of us. And I was. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months later, I was finishing breakfast when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Celeste. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter. Ray stopped by that afternoon with a final report on David Kessler. He's working construction now, Ray said, accepting a beer and settling into one of the patio chairs. Day labor, mostly. Lives in a studio apartment downtown. Good for him. Honest work builds character. The criminal investigation was dropped. Not enough evidence for prosecution, but his reputation is ruined. He'll never work in development again. And Celeste? Substitute teaching at public schools? Living with her parents, driving a 10-year-old Honda? Word is she's seeing a therapist. I nodded. Good. She needs help. You ever think about reaching out, trying to work things out for the kids' sake? The kids are fine, Ray. Better than fine. They're happy, they're stable, and they know they're loved. That's what matters. And you? I looked around the backyard where Eli was shooting baskets and Lila was reading under the oak tree I'd planted when we first moved here. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That evening, as I was tucking Lila into bed, she asked me about the text message she'd seen me reading earlier. Was that from Mom? Yes. What did she want? To say she was sorry. Are you going to forgive her? I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. Forgiveness isn't something you do for other people, sweetheart. It's something you do for yourself, when you're ready to let go of anger and hurt. Are you ready? I'm getting there. Do you think Mom will ever come back? I don't know, but if she does, it will have to be as a different person than the one who left. Lila nodded solemnly, then hugged me tight. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. Later that night, after both kids were asleep, I sat on the front porch with a beer and thought about the past year. Celeste's text message had started a chain of events that destroyed one life and rebuilt another. She'd wanted to erase me, to replace me with someone she thought was better. Instead, she'd freed me to become someone stronger. My phone buzzed with another message, this one from an unknown number. Mr. Vance, this is Jennifer Walsh from the newspaper. I'm working on a follow-up story about municipal corruption, and I'd like to interview you about your role in exposing the Kessler situation. Would you be interested? I thought about it for a moment, then typed back, Thanks for the offer, but I'm not interested in being part of the story. I was just a concerned citizen doing his civic duty. Some victories are best enjoyed in private. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight I was content to be exactly who I was, exactly where I belonged. The house was quiet except for the familiar sounds of home, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the soft breathing of my children sleeping safely in their beds. This was what mattered. This was what I'd fought for. This was what I'd won. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, leaving the past behind me where it belonged. After all, some chapters end so that better ones can begin.